Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first full day of the 2022 Future Leaders Climate Summit. It was great meeting some of you throughout the day yesterday, and I hope I get the chance to speak with all of you before our time in Miami Beach comes to an end. For those of you whom I have not met, I am Nikki DeVignes, and I lead the Future Leaders Climate Initiative here at the Aspen Institute. We designed the initiative with the goal of cultivating, uplifting, and harnessing the voices of the emerging generation that are driving and will continue to shape the conversation around climate solutions. This summit is at the heart of the work. You are all here because of the inspiring climate work you are already doing. And I'm excited to see what the future holds as each of you continue to learn and grow as the rising generation of leaders on climate action. As you engage in breakout sessions and plenaries throughout the week, I challenge you to think about the climate-related problems your community is facing, however you define community, how those problems intersect with other social issues, and how you can use your skills to build a better tomorrow for everyone. Ask yourself, as a leader, what role will you play in building a more resilient, adaptable, and sustainable community? We hope you glean an abundance of new skills and knowledge from the experiences we have planned for you throughout the summit over the next few days. And please take advantage of the learning and networking opportunities offered at Aspen Ideas Climate this week. Take the time to go to sessions on topics you know little to nothing about and make new connections in this space that may spark innovative and exciting ideas. Today's agenda is packed, and it begins with taking it to the streets. A plenary focus on Miami Beach's journey to climate resiliency for all. As Mayor DeVignes said yesterday during the Miami Port session, if you were able to attend, what is happening here in Miami is a preview to what is happening in the rest of the world. Miami is a ground zero for impacts of climate change, and we have much to learn from this community. The panel will be moderated by Delta Flores from PBS Student Labs, but to kick things off, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Congresswoman Castor. Congresswoman Castor represents Florida's 14th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives. She was elected in 2006 as the first woman to represent Florida's Hillsborough and Pinellas counties in the U.S. Congress. She is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee and serves as chair of the Select Committee on Climate Crisis. Please give a warm welcome to Congresswoman Castor.
Good morning. I'm thrilled to be here at Aspen Ideas Climate Miami Beach to kick off. And congratulations to you all. As the future leaders, you were selected from 600 applications. They've only tapped 100 future leaders, and now, I mean, that's an enormous accomplishment in and of itself. And now, through this week, we want you all to get to know each other, to compare notes, go to these sessions, learn a lot, and plan to collaborate the rest of your professional careers. We're going to need you now more than ever. So how many of you are from the Miami area, South Florida? Okay, how many are from the state of Florida? Okay, how many from the Northeast? Okay, over there, the West Coast, anyone? All right. International? Fantastic. See, there's good diversity here to get started. So I am thrilled that you all are here. You are needed now more than ever. We've arrived at a critical moment for clean energy and climate action. And young people have more at stake in the fight for livable climate than anyone else. And as leaders, you understand the risks and the costs and the opportunities better than anyone else as well. And as Americans, for all of the Americans here, I want you to understand that you, all of us, we have an outsized responsibility to lead. Because since the Industrial Revolution, America has been responsible for the highest cumulative emissions, greenhouse gases, and we've been responsible for the highest per capita emissions. So even though China has taken off now and other countries across the world kind of outpacing us, and we're lowering our emissions, we still have an outsized responsibility. So I want you all to internalize that and let that be a motivator for you. But the good news is that we have the talent, we have the technology and innovation, and we have the resources to build a clean energy economy that works for everyone. And I want you to know just how important your voices are to the transition to clean energy and the climate fight. In 2018, when the Democrats won the majority in the House of Representatives, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi got the gavel back, she created the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. She asked me to chair the effort. I grew up here in Florida. I was born here in Miami. I've grown up in Tampa. I'm an environmental lawyer. My career was devoted to clean air, clean water, keeping Florida the special place that it is. But during my professional life, it was climate now that has become issue number one for the place that we love, for the earth, for my daughters, for your families, for your futures. So the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, I'm not a scientist, but I was smart enough to hire a scientist, and Anna Unruh-Cohn is my staff director here. I hope you'll get to know her here today. At the outset of the committee's work, we called on youth leaders to set the table, to make sure that we were aiming high enough, that we were ambitious enough. And if you watch the documentary Youth the Gov on Netflix, you'll see some of the exchanges from our very first hearing that was to hear from youth leaders. We had one of the young plaintiffs from Juliana versus the United States, the students who sued the United States government over the climate crisis. And we listened to Chris Suggs, who was just recently the youngest person ever elected in North Carolina, the youngest elected official. Greta Thunberg came before our committee and pushed back on our Republican members of the committee who questioned why should the United States act as China continues to pollute? Well, she responded that China's emissions shouldn't be an excuse for the United States to back off its own efforts to limit greenhouse gases. So then what happened? We commenced this huge outreach effort across the country. Business and labor and scientists and farmers and faith leaders. And we gathered all the information, synthesized it, and we released our Climate Crisis Action Plan in 2020. It was described at the time as the most detailed and well thought out plan for addressing climate change that has ever been part of U.S. politics. So we have the roadmap, a shop full of recommendations across the economy. This is for Congress to act on. Pathways to building a cleaner, more resilient electricity sector, transportation sector, how we build and upgrade homes and businesses and maximize energy efficiency and reduce pollution, how we invest in America's workers and in frontline environmental justice communities, and invest in smart food systems. I mean, it's this thick. We didn't want it to go and just sit on the shelf as other congressional reports do. The science was our guide. We know we've got to get to net zero as soon as possible, no later than 2050. So the science was our guide, and our moral obligation to future generations was our North Star. So it was modeled, and Energy Innovation, a think tank, said that the plan gets us well on the way. We would create well over 500,000 jobs doing it and generate nearly $8 trillion in health and climate benefits. So now we have the answer to the question of how do we do this. What remains, politically speaking, is will we do it? So we had the roadmap when President Biden was elected, and young people across this country were key to making that change from the last president who thought it was a hoax and said the threat of birds dying in windmills, let's not even go there and spend any time. The point is that young people, that election was so close. This tipped the balance. And the roadmap was there. So with President Biden's help already, out of our climate crisis action plan, we have passed 400 out of the 700 recommendations in the House of Representatives. We have enacted over 200 of them into law, and I want you to check it out, climatecrisis.house.gov at some point. We have a tracker. We're tracking our progress. Thanks to the funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're about to build 500,000 electric vehicle chargers across the country. We're expanding cleaner public transit. We are deploying electric school buses and clean transit buses. We're targeting those investments to frontline environmental justice communities. But that's not all. The bipartisan infrastructure bill gets a lot of attention. But what happens in climate policy in Washington is every time you're working on a big piece of legislation, you take another step. I wish we could solve the climate crisis in one fell swoop, and there are some big pieces that are still left to do. But things like the defense bill, the bill that has bipartisan support and passes every Congress, is very important. A lot of businesses rely on the defense bill, a lot of contractors. A lot of health and energy research goes on in the defense bill. So this defense bill that was passed in December makes historic investments in reducing greenhouse gases, in military installations, in transit and transport for our military and allies, and it ups climate resilience on those military installations and invest in clean energy on bases. DOD, they get a ton of money, okay? So when you hear about what's going on in Washington, if some of your businesses interact with the military or contractors whatsoever, that is a very important place to concentrate every single year and make progress. The annual appropriations bill this year, with the Democrats in control for a change, made historic investments in climate. The most historic investments in energy efficiency and renewables than we've ever made. Plus, we had to fund the bipartisan infrastructure bill, so all of those transit and EJ investments. That bill also created the Civilian Climate Corps with $20 million at the Department of Interior that is the precursor to what we want to do for a broader-based civilian conservation climate corps all across the country. And young people are hungry to do it. And then, the House and the Senate are in conference right now on another competitiveness bill, because we want to make things in America. We want to lift up our workers. There's a chip shortage. And the America Competes Act will make historic investments in solar manufacturing and those all-important computer chips that will power our electric vehicles and trucks and new transit vehicles and smart meters and everything we need to do to upgrade the electric grid. And the stakes are so high now. I mean, I'm from Tampa. It's kind of like yes? Ooh, all right. I mean, Florida, it's so hot. I mean, it's nice out here right now, but we're about to get into a summer season where the summer approaches with dread now. And it's the extreme temperatures, it's these rapidly intensifying storms. I mean, how many times can Louisiana, the border of Louisiana and Texas, get pummeled by massive hurricanes, right where the fossil fuel industry cut the heart? I don't know, maybe God's trying to tell us something. But no, there are a lot of vulnerable people there that are going to need to be lifted up and helped. And we've got to make sure that these investments go to them. But the wildfires out west, farmers are awake to this now. They've come on board. They want climate investments because their crops are hurting, their livestock's hurting. You all are going to be key to some of these solutions all across the economy. There's no part of this economy that will not be touched by it. And that's why I work every day, and you have dedicated folks in the Congress and in the professional staff working to reduce heat trapping gases and expand renewable energy. And there's a big piece left to do. Because we can create all the electric vehicle charging stations in the world, but if we're plugging into oil, gas, and coal, that's not going to solve the climate crisis. So the big piece that is passed the House of Representatives right now that is on the front burner for the U.S. Senate, and all Democrats are for it, and we're waiting for the last straggler to come on and do the deal. Those are the historic investments in clean energy that we need. For solar, for wind, for upgrading our buildings, for upgrading the grid, for making sure that it's affordable. Great if we have charging infrastructure and the car companies are only making EVs down the road, but if they're not affordable to the average person, that's not going to help us with the transition. That's the big piece. And then what happened this spring? Putin invaded Ukraine in an unprovoked fashion. What a butcher he is. And God bless the Europeans, because what did they say at that time? The Germans, who had been reliant on Russian gas from the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, said, we're not taking your gas anymore. We're going to phase that out. And the Europeans had already been kind of ahead of the U.S. in their climate plan, their European Green Deal. And they call it Fit for 55, which sounds like an exercise program for me. But it's Fit for 55 is to get to 55% reduction in greenhouse gases by 2030, 2035. They're now going back in the European Commission and the Parliament to raise their ambition, to go farther, because it is so self-evident to them as Ukrainians are being bombed and they're taking in the refugees that they've got to move to clean energy. They cannot be victim to petrodespots like Vladimir Putin. And we cannot let OPEC, or even petrodespots right here in the U.S., keep us tied to fossil fuels. Can't you, I mean, it's so self-evident now, more than ever, as gas prices are like $5 a gallon, that we have got to make a much more ambitious transition to off fossil fuels, break that addiction. We can replace it with clean energy. There's huge potential to create jobs, but here's what I want you all to know. There are very powerful special interests in Washington, D.C., and in state capitals, and in other capitals across the globe, who have, they're so tied to the past and the revenue streams that come from dirty fuel sources that it is very hard to break it. This has been part of the strategy at the Supreme Court over years. It hasn't just been about women's reproductive rights and overruling Roe v. Wade. It has been about allowing big money to play in politics. Boy, and they play here in Tallahassee big time. They control the electric utilities here, really have a stranglehold over party politics in Tallahassee, but in Washington. So it takes people power to overcome those powerful special interests. But there is hope. We are seeing a lot of progress, and it's very important for the larger policy decisions to pass laws. Can't do things by executive order. If it's going to be durable and make a real difference, you've got to pass laws. But the good news is, we're not alone. There's so much happening at the local level. You all can make a huge difference in your city councils, your county boards, states, and businesses. Oftentimes, the businesses are well in lead. A corporation like Walmart wanted to come see me last week and brag on everything they're doing on their supply chains and their everything they're doing in transit. So, and here's what else is happening. Who knows what happened about a week ago in California during the Stagecoach Festival near Coachella? Anyone knows what happened in California? California powered its entire state that day with almost 100% renewable power, mostly solar from the solar fields down near Coachella. Isn't that amazing? 100%. So we can do it. Florida, by the way, we're at about 3 or 4% renewable in the Sunshine State. The car companies are only going to build EVs going forward. So there's potential. Food systems, farmers want those solutions. And now you all, the most devoted, smartest generation in history, is poised to make a difference. You, the millennials and Generation Z, outnumber baby boomers by a wide margin. You've got to help Gen Xers like me get things done. So I'm relying on you now. Now is the time to build your relationships, build your political power, have the conversation, have the talk. Just like when parents probably gave you a talk about the birds and the bees. By the way, my oldest daughter was mortified when I gave her the talk of the birds and the bees, but my younger daughter sat down, she said, tell me all about it. So you've got to have the talk with your friends, your parents, and your neighbors to build the political movement that we need to take the big steps to the clean energy economy. I have all the faith in the world in you. You've got every tool at your disposal to do it. But now is the time. The time is urgent. We're running out of time. And we have this overriding moral obligation to our families to get this done. So I'm counting on you. Thank you.